Hello, my name is Zeina Khaled from grade 12B, and today I'll be talking about the life in medieval England. So, the way of life throughout the Middle Ages was considerably different from how it is now. While certain people, including traders and lawyers, did reside in medieval towns, the majority of people did not. Kings and other strong, wealthy nobles dominated society at this time. Between the fall of the Roman Empire and the start of the Renaissance, the Middle Ages, often known as the medieval period, spanned from the 5th century until the late 15th century. It was characterized by significant occurrences like the construction of the great cathedrals, the Crusades, the bubonic plague, the growth of cities and universities, the Great Schism, the official division between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church, and the flourishing of the arts, including manuscript illumination. The lesser nobilities, such as lords and knights back in the day, were given lands. The lords and the knights gave the powerful nobility their devotion and military support in exchange for territory. This piece of territory, which the lord ruled over, was referred to as fief. At the bottom of the social scale, peasants rented land from the less powerful lords. Peasants provided the lords with crops or livestock in exchange for the rent, and they also labored in the Lord's fields a few days every week. In the Middle Ages, around 90% of people were peasant. The majority of them were peasants. We will examine several different parts of the medieval period to better comprehend everyday life back then, because the daily lives of nobility and peasants throughout the Middle Ages were different from daily life today. I'll be going over men in the medieval period, as well as women, children, and the church. So, for men of the medieval period, despite certain similarities, the masculine position or the male position has changed significantly since the Middle Ages. Back in the day, men were valued as the primary providers and leaders of their families. Women generally catered to the needs of the males in their lives and endeavored to please them. Men were treated with respect and admiration since they were seen as the most important members of society. Men were not expected to take care of their homes or their kids. Women were supposed to do this. A man's social standing was based on his wealth and the amount of land he possessed. Peasant men sometimes led hard lives and worked as servants for wealthier men, and in times of war, they were even obliged to fight. The majority of wealthy men did not work as such and relied instead on the income provided by their land or an inheritance from their relatives. Wealthier men frequently held large areas of land and paid peasants or women to take care of it, while more affluent or more wealthier men frequently found work at courts or as knights. Poorer men or less wealthier men were typically engaged in farming and land work. So let's talk about women in medieval times now. First of all, a small quote. Women's rights are human rights and human rights are women rights, said by the one and only Jennifer Lopez, because whatever she said right here, which is women's rights, did not exist back then. Let's start off by what type of jobs were available for women in the Middle Ages. The majority of people in the Middle Ages were farmers, and women participated in agricultural work on an equal basis with males. However, there have also been occurrences of female authors, artists, and skilled workers in a family business or enterprise. In the Middle Ages, a woman's role was to raise children and care for the household. She had to assist with cooking and cleaning, as well as take care of the children's upbringing. More affluent women engaged in womanly hobbies, including needlework. At this time, women were not required to have formal education and were considered inferior members of society, or more likely, the inferior gender. In order to help them sustain themselves if they ever become orphaned, dads or fathers back in the day occasionally taught their daughters the trades they practiced, so they can learn how to like depend on themselves if they are to be orphaned. Noble women were their husband's property and had no rights. They were to be responsible, devoted, and wise. Women had to always show their husbands love and respect and be submissive to him or them in both speech and behavior. Let's now talk about the children in medieval times. A child's life depended on the social status and wealth of the parents. The kids from poorer families were the opposite of richer kids who had everything. They were expected to assist at home with chores that were appropriate for their age and stage of development from an early age. They could take care of pets, younger siblings, carry and get items, cook, and even assist with family businesses. Noble boys were frequently placed in foster homes where they would get the education required to succeed as adults, using wooden swords, bows, and miniature horses or ponies. Boys as young as 7 started training to become knights. They observed the knights they lived with and learned by doing what they watched them do. Additionally, they picked up reading and writing skills in Latin as well as their home languages. Girls were not the fragile dolls one might assume them to be, either. From an early age, they learned how to manage their families and act in their future husband's absences. This required having a thorough understanding of everything, including budgeting, delegation, hand sewing, and hosting large gatherings. Now, lastly, let's talk about the church since it played a huge role. During the Middle Ages, Christianity and the Catholic Church were very important in Europe. The local church served as the center of the community. People participated in weekly ceremonies at the church. They were wed, confirmed, and buried there. Even monarchs or kings on their thrones were validated by the church as having the divine right to rule. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church grew significantly in wealth and influence. Church donations, known as tithes, were given to the church as a percentage of people's incomes. They also made payments to the church for a number of events, including communion, marriage, and baptism. Additionally, penances were given to the church. The rich frequently donated land to the church in the end. It possessed a third of the total land area in Western Europe. The church was also exempt from paying any land taxes to the king because it was regarded as independent. Many church leaders grew up to be wealthy and influential. In the church, many lords rose to positions of authority, such as bishop or abbot. They were in really high positions back then. Thank you for listening, and that is all for my PowerPoint presentation.